She was just a teenager waiting for her mom. No crime, no noise, just a quiet evening outside her own home. But one officer's laughter turned her truth into a cruel joke. What he didn't know was that the woman he mocked was about to walk into the scene, and nothing would ever be the same again. This isn't just about a mistake. It's about a system that strips dignity before it ever sees humanity. But when her mother finally arrived, the story took a turn no one expected. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. Nicole, a bright 16-year-old with dreams bigger than her small town, sat on the front steps waiting for her mom to return from work. She was used to the long stretches of quiet, sketching in her notebook while the neighborhood passed her by. To most, she was just another kid enjoying the last days of summer. But Nicole carried a quiet pride her mom wasn't just any parent. She was a woman who had given everything to protect her country. That afternoon, as the shadows stretched across the sidewalk and a patrol car turned the corner, Nicole had no idea her world was about to shift. What began as a simple wait for her mother would soon spiral into a test of dignity, respect, and truth. She thought she was safe on her own doorstep. She was wrong. But when the officer rolled down his window, the story took a darker turn than Nicole ever expected. The patrol car slowed as if it had all the time in the world. Nicole's eyes lifted from her notebook, and she felt the weight of that stare before the window even rolled down. Officer Reeves leaned out, his voice laced with mockery, asking what she was doing there, as though she didn't belong on the very steps she'd grown up on. Nicole answered calmly, saying she was waiting for her mom. But the smirk that spread across his face wasn't the reaction she expected. He laughed. Not because he thought she was lying about waiting, but because of who she claimed her mother was. Nicole said her mom served in the military, part of special forces. To her, it wasn't boasting. It was pride. To him, it was laughable. He mocked her words loudly enough for neighbors to glance out their windows, chuckling as if the idea of a black woman in uniform holding that kind of rank was absurd. His laughter wasn't just cruel, it was a blade that cut at her dignity, piece by piece, in front of the world around her. Nicole tried to defend her mom, repeating herself, her voice trembling but steady. She thought maybe if she held her ground, he'd back off. But Reeves only pressed harder, stepping out of his car now, towering over her. He asked for ID she didn't have, questioned why she was hanging around, hinting at suspicion when there was nothing suspicious at all. For Nicole, each word was a reminder. She wasn't being seen as a child on her own doorstep. She was being seen as a problem. Her chest tightened as the officer's radio crackled, the sound of backup being casually requested. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because he could. Each passing second stretched thin, neighbors whispering, the air thick with unease. Nicole thought about running, but the weight of stories she'd heard, about what happens when you run, kept her still, her palms sweaty, her breath shallow. The laughter faded into something colder. Reeves began circling her like a hunter testing prey, questioning her story again and again, waiting for her to trip over her own words. Nicole's heart raced, but her answers didn't change. She was telling the truth. And the truth wasn't enough. Minutes dragged like hours. Every sound felt amplified. The crunch of his boots on the pavement, the static on his radio, the murmur of neighbors too afraid to step in. Nicole's pride in her mom, once her shield, now felt like the very reason she was under attack. Reeves leaned closer, his shadow covering hers, and told her that people like her always made things up. His words weren't just a denial of her story, they were a denial of her worth. For Nicole, fear mixed with anger, and anger mixed with shame. Why should she feel ashamed for telling the truth? Why should she feel small when her mother had given everything for a country that still questioned if they belonged? The questions burned inside her, but she swallowed them, trapped in a moment that seemed impossible to escape. Then the sound of an engine in the distance, familiar, powerful. It was her mother's car, turning onto the street. Nicole's heart pounded harder. Relief and dread collided. Relief that she wouldn't face this alone. Dread because she knew the confrontation was about to ignite. Reeves hadn't noticed yet. He was still circling, still testing, still laughing under his breath. Nicole's eyes flicked to the corner where headlights cut through the fading light. She knew her mom would step out soon. And when she did, the truth Reeves had mocked would stand in front of him in flesh and blood. But would it end the humiliation or escalate it into something far more dangerous? What happened next would shake the street, the officer, and Nicole's very sense of safety in ways she could never forget. The car door slammed shut, and suddenly the air shifted. Nicole's mom stepped out in full uniform, her boots striking the pavement with the kind of authority that could silence a room. Her presence was undeniable. Decorated patches across her chest, a stance sharpened by years of service. But Reeves didn't look impressed. He looked challenged. His smirk vanished, replaced with the rigid mask of a man who refused to admit he was wrong. For a split second, Nicole felt safe. She thought her mother's uniform, her sacrifice, her very existence would end the humiliation. But instead, the tension snapped tighter. Reeves squared his shoulders, refusing to back down, his voice louder now, demanding proof, demanding respect that he had already denied. He wasn't laughing anymore. He was bristling, like a cornered animal unwilling to yield. Neighbors leaned further out of their windows, phones now raised, recording. The street had become a stage, and every second carried the weight of history repeating itself. Reeves's hand twitched near his belt, not on his weapon, but close enough to spark terror in Nicole's chest. She knew stories that began this way, and too many ended in silence, in mourning. Her mother's voice cut through the air, steady, commanding, unwavering. She didn't plead, she didn't explain. She asserted her rank, her service, her right to stand there as more than enough proof. Every word she spoke was both a shield for her daughter and a blade against the lies Reeves had tried to weave. But the more authority she showed, the more defiant he became. It was a battle of truths, hers, undeniable and decorated in service, against his, fueled by prejudice and power. Nicole stood frozen between them, her pulse hammering, caught in the storm of voices and stares. She wanted to scream, to beg someone to see the truth, but her voice locked inside her chest. And then, a chilling silence. Reeves stopped talking, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with the realization that his mockery had just collapsed in front of an entire street. For a terrifying moment, no one moved. The air felt like glass, one crack, and it would shatter into chaos. Nicole's heart screamed inside her chest. Was this where it would end? Would her mom's truth finally be seen, or would it be erased in anger? That moment, caught between fear and defiance, silence and explosion, was the turning point. It wasn't just about proving who her mother was. It was about forcing a system, a street, and an officer to confront the reality he tried to laugh away. And in that breathless pause, with the weight of generations pressing down, everyone watching knew. Something irreversible was about to happen. What came next would not only change Nicole's life, it would ripple far beyond that quiet street. The silence on that street didn't last forever. Reeves eventually stepped back, his voice sharp but shaky, retreating behind the thin shield of procedure. Nicole's mom never wavered, her authority unshaken as she stood between her daughter and the man who had mocked her. The officer's apology, if it could even be called that, was forced, muttered, and hollow. But the damage had already been done. For Nicole, The memory of laughter cutting through her pride would never fade. She would remember the way neighbors watched, the way suspicion was cast on her skin before her words were even considered. And she would remember the way her mother's presence shifted everything, not because she suddenly became believable, but because power had walked into the frame. That night, Nicole lay awake replaying every second. It wasn't just about one officer. It wasn't even just about her. It was about the truth she had seen with her own eyes, that dignity could be stripped in moments, that service and sacrifice meant little when filtered through prejudice. Her mother had defended a nation, yet here on her own street, she had to defend her very existence. And isn't that the story we've heard too many times? That no matter how much is given, no matter how much is proven, respect can still be withheld. That innocence isn't always enough. That children like Nicole are forced to grow up faster, carrying lessons no child should have to learn. But within that painful reality lies something else: the strength to stand, the courage to endure, and the unbreakable pride of knowing the truth, even when others try to laugh it away. Nicole's story is one of millions, echoes in a history that still repeats itself. The question is, how many more echoes before the world chooses to listen? Because this wasn't just a uniform on a mother's chest. It was a mirror held up to all of us. And the reflection isn't just about Reeves or Nicole. It's about what we allow, what we excuse, and what we refuse to change. So I'll leave you with this. When the laughter dies down, when the cameras stop recording, and when the street falls silent, whose side of the story will you believe? And more importantly, what will you do with it?